It is October 1st, Sunday night, GU 5:30 class, and here we go.
All right, and just a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into it. Is Becca on? I haven't seen her yet. Becca, if you're on, go ahead and hit the space bar and give us a wave. Brock and Emily, I don't see either. I think I just saw Dion join. Hi, Dion. Yes.
Oh.
We missed you last week. Welcome back.
Thank
Anybody
you.
else? Emily? Okay, so we'll keep an eye and see if those other people join. All right, well, thanks again, you guys, for the work you've been putting in this week. It was great to get your emails and kind of see the organizations that you're working on, and also just kind of getting a sense for where your passions are. So it's been fun to read your responses. Dan, could I get sharing access, please? And as I mentioned in my email this week, today we are going to dive a little deeper into poverty. Raise of hands, how many of you already watched the video? And a few of you have already turned in your questionnaires for that video, so well done. Thank you for doing that. And so that's just kind of a precursor to poverty. Well, there's a lot of poverty out there, but actually there's some surprising things about poverty too. So let's see what we can learn. A quick question for you. Of the 6 billion people living in 1999, how many do you think lived on less than $1.90 a day? 1999, that's when I got married. I've been married 24 years, so about a quarter of a century ago. Go ahead and put it in the chat for me. What do you think? How many people of 6.0 billion lived on less than $1.90 a day 24 years ago? And then same question for less than 5 years ago. In 2017, we had another 1.6 billion, so 7.6 billion people. How many do you think lived on less than $1.90 a day in 2017? All right, I see the chat filling up. Good. And in 1999, 28% of the global population was considered poor or lived below the poverty line, and we're using that $1.90 in terms of cost per day. In 2017, it was only 9.3. Now, does that surprise you? Did you assume that the number was getting worse over time? Raise your hand if you thought the number would have been the other way around. Yeah, that's kind of like, whoa, didn't actually realize that. So that's why sometimes it's good to just take a look at the numbers and see what's actually happening around the world. So in Barna, which is a research group, they tell us, oh, here comes Becca. They tell us that 67% of Americans assume that poverty levels are continuing to get worse, to increase, meaning that they're worsening. And actually the opposite is true. However, there we go. However, since COVID, we've seen a little bit of a turn in that trend. And Ariel, this is different since we went through this class, but we've actually seen that COVID has had an effect on poverty. And now we're seeing poverty rising for the first time in an entire generation. So the effects of the global pandemic have actually reversed the progress that has been made in reducing poverty. And in 2020, that was the first time that extreme poverty was more so than it was the prior year. And that was the first time that happened since the 1990s. So we could say that our generation right now, we have a greater sense of urgency, or we should have a greater sense of urgency to do as much as we can to continue to help the worldwide efforts to reduce poverty, because we have a better opportunity, since there's more need right now than there has been in an entire generation. That struck me pretty strongly when I was preparing today. So I hope that just kind of makes you think a little bit. And the reason we shared the Kenya video, we wanted to share Lebanon again, Ariel, but we already had a Lebanon video a couple of weeks ago. So we said, well, let's do a different continent. So in Africa, 41% of the people live on less than $1.25 a day. That's pretty shocking. And this is in sub-Saharan Africa. But compared to the rest of the world, Africa has some of the most severe poverty issues around the world. And those that just continues to be true. It hasn't gotten, compared to the rest of the world, they are still have the worst poverty worldwide. Now let's switch a little bit and just think about children specifically, childhood poverty, and what happens to children who live in poverty, no matter where they are. And these numbers aren't going to be specific to Africa, although if we broke it out, they're probably larger in Africa. But again, let's use the chat. And this is a hard thing to think of, but how many children under the age of 5 would you guess died last year? So just strictly talking last year, how many kids under the age of 5 died from a preventable cause? So we're not including accidents or that kind of thing, but what would be your guess on how many children around the world died under the age of 5 from a preventable cause? Drop it in the chat. And then same kind of idea, do you think that the rate of child death is increasing or decreasing? So what might that number look like this year? Do you think it's going to be better or worse than last year? And these are only preventable causes. So what are the top 5 preventable causes? What would be your guesses on that? What might be some causes of childhood death? All right, you guys ready? So 4.1 million under the age of 5 died last year from a preventable cause. In 1990, that number was 5 times higher. So it is getting better. We are doing more to stop diseases or things that cause childhood death. So we are getting better as just globally, as global citizens. And the top 5 causes of death that are preventable are pneumonia. So whether that's COVID or just the regular flu, and that's usually has to do with lack of access to immunizations and antibiotics. Complications from childbirth, and that's related directly to hospital care and access to care. Infection for newborns, and that could be related to breastfeeding, so they don't get enough nutrition from their mother if the mother develops an infection. Or again, it could be lack of hospital care if the child themselves develops an infection. Diarrhea is another one. Now we're going a little bit beyond the newborn stage, but that's an effect directly related to access to clean water and proper nutrition. And malaria. Still, malaria is one of the big ones. And that, again, of course, hospital care if they do get sick, but even in prevention, mosquito netting in certain places where that's an issue. So are these, is pneumonia something that we should be talking about still in 2023 as one of the leading causes for childhood death for children ages 5 and under?
And this is around the world?
This is global. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. These are global numbers. So these are some of the issues that families face around the world. Now, in the US, if we think about just how many people in the US who are over 25 years old or older, how many of them live below the poverty level? And usually it's people without a high school diploma, and it's 1/4 of the people over age 25. So 1/4 of all individuals in the United States who are older than 25 years old live under the poverty line. Is that surprising? Did you think that number was that high?
I actually thought it would be higher.
Really? Okay. Who else?
I'm sorry if I missed it. What was the dollar amount for the poverty line specifically in the United States? I'm guessing it's not $1.90 a day.
It's not. I don't have it in here. Dan,
I
do you
just
know
looked
that
it up
number?
because I just looked it up. It's 13,590 in 2022 for a single person
For annual income?
for annual income, which is, I was looking it up just primarily because I was like interested to see if that number is shocking. And that number, $13,000, that's $1,000 a month. Like that's $250 a week. That is shocking to me for 26%.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's those who don't have a high school diploma that are most likely to fall in that category. And if you go back to some of the what we talked about last week in terms of what has allowed you to not be in a situation like that, and we talked about education being one of them. So how is poverty in the United States different than other countries? Different than like in Kenya that we just saw the video, or different from in South America or Lebanon or anywhere else around the world? And the primary difference, we would say, is that the US has a lot of safety nets. So in the US, if you are in a situation where you're living below the poverty line, there are resources, whether it's through the government or through neighborhood outreaches or different types of things, where there is access to assistance. So there are places that you can go and have a safety net and get some assistance, as opposed to in other countries, that's probably not always the case. Or if it is the case, it's not as much availability of those resources.
Can I just also say, I think like the resources are one thing as far as if you need assistance, but even something as simple as a minimum wage, like California, where I live, you're making 3 times the poverty level if you just work at Chick-fil-A because of the minimum wage. So like some of the things I don't think about with poverty is not just what happens when, but the basic structures we have in place that require employment to have a fair wage that enables you to live above the poverty line, which is also something that's not necessarily the case anywhere else.
Right.
And
Yeah.
in California, because I live here too, it even above the poverty line, it's still a struggle, just because rent itself is above 2,500, and if you're making $250 a week, you're not even making rent, let alone bills or food. So yeah, that's
Right.
yeah.
Yep. So those are all the types of things that go into these types of issues, these types of problems. They're not really clear cut. They're not really well defined, or they're not the same everywhere, but kind of those global numbers allow us to kind of have an idea of where we all of us are in the US right now. So well, actually, I think there's 1 or 2 people getting on from Mexico. But in terms of our opportunity and how we live, how does that compare to the rest of the world? And that's what this slide is about, on the irony. Experts estimate that it would be billions of dollars each year to end world hunger. And that's something that the UN, one of the UN's primary purposes is to end poverty worldwide. So just talking about world hunger, it would take billions of dollars each year, not just one time to fix all the problems, but each year to end world hunger. And then if we look at how much Americans spend on weight loss programs and products, because this is related to world hunger, and how much Americans spend on obesity-related healthcare, so services related to those issues, the numbers are pretty staggering. You guys ready? So $44 billion a year is what it would take each year to end world hunger. Americans spend $62 billion on weight loss programs and products, and then another $190 billion on healthcare related to obesity. So that's $152 billion annually that we as a society and as a country spend on issues related to food. And that is more than 3 times what it would take to end world hunger around the world.
I think it might be as much as 252, which would be more in the effect of
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
That's my typo, sorry.
I was like,
Yeah, we caught you, Keen. We caught you, Keen.
Hey, I sent it to you to review, Dan. So thank you. We'll fix that. So 252 billion. Yep. Thank you. So remember when we talked about what if every person gave $50, every person in the US or every person in the world gave $50, how would that multiply, and what could we do with that amount of money? Even if we just said, well, if each of us, instead of investing in programs and products, we decided to invest that in our fellow citizen of the world, how much of a help could it be? So this is just going to show the irony in terms of it's not such a big problem that it can't be tackled, right? A lot of times 44 billion sounds like a lot of money. Even though I live in California and make minimum wage, that still sounds like a lot of money. So again, what can I do about it? What does my $50 do or my $500 do? But the power of doing it together really multiplies it and helps us make a dent in all of that. And it's not just a dent, like it's a considerable opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about wealth. is there a fixed amount of wealth in the world? Like, is there one pot of resources and we just got to figure out how to make it last? Is there only one fixed amount of wealth? And if you think about it a little bit, no, there's not a fixed amount of wealth because we continue to make more money, right? It's not coming all from the same single pot. So it's really about distribution of wealth. It's not just about, is there wealth? It's about how it's distributed. So for example, if 10 people are playing poker, right? They all chip in with their $100 chip. That is a distribution of wealth. Everybody is equal. Everybody has the same amount of money, $100. But when Dan wins and takes home the pot, now 9 people don't have any money and Dan has $1,000, right? So it's the same amount of wealth, but we've distributed it differently. And that's kind of the issue with global economy or global wealth, is how it's distributed and who has access to it and who is able to use it. When we think again about, is there only a single pot of wealth in the world? Is there a fixed amount? And the answer is no, right? We can create new wealth. If we have an area that doesn't have any farms in their community, and then just one farm starts, now that community is going to have fresh produce. The produce is going to get sold. There's going to be more revenue coming into the community. So through production, they're able to create new wealth. Same thing for commerce. If you take Ariel's jacket and you say, hey, Ariel, I'll pay you $20 for that jacket because I'm cold right now. And he sells it to me for $20, but then I turn around and put it on eBay for $59.99. Well, I've created new wealth. Same thing with business. If I go to my local bank and I say, I have a fabulous idea to end world hunger. Please loan me $100,000 for this idea. And I take that $100,000 and I create a business and I multiply the revenue. I'm creating new wealth. So there is opportunity to create new wealth in the world. In the same way, there's loss of wealth. If you're not careful and you drop your iPhone 14 in the toilet and you have to go out and buy another one, now that's just wastefulness and loss of wealth. So part of it, what we have to do is replace loss of wealth with new wealth or create new wealth. So thinking again about the poverty around the world, are things getting better or worse in the world economy in terms of global wealth? Are things getting better or worse on the global plane of wealth? What's your guess? Go ahead and drop it in the chat for me. Better or worse? How are we doing on a global scale? Yeah. So the fact is, things are getting better. You know, we talked about what the poverty levels were in 1999 and what they were in 2017. And the gross world product, which is the total sum of all goods and services produced worldwide, is improving. So in the 1900s, it was 1.1 trillion. Now you have to think about how many people there were in the 1900s. I wasn't alive at that time. Dan was. Dan, how many people were there in 1900s? So you divide the wealth of the world by that number. In 1925, it grew. 1950, now we're at 4 trillion. 1975, 15 trillion. 2000, 41 trillion. And in 2014, that number was 78 trillion. And the poorer countries are actually growing faster than affluent countries, which is really interesting. What are some of the reasons why poorer countries might be growing faster in terms of how much wealth they have as a country? Any ideas?
Unrealized potential. There's more room to grow. There's less room to grow for more affluent countries. It's harder to produce higher GDP when you already have a high GDP.
Good. Yep. So more opportunity. Anyone else? What comes to mind? Becca, I know you have something that comes to mind.
I can't control my face. No, I don't know. I'm not sold on it. I think that we have raised our standard of living, and so like what we expect out of things has increased. And so when we say that gross world product, domestic product, whatever has gone up, and the ability to produce, I mean, that's technology, it's innovation, it's like understanding how we've built roads, and we are no longer relying on animals to get us around places. We have cargo, and we have vast amounts of land to store cargo, and ports at these countries that are normally very poor, and we've used them. Like, but I don't buy it, because just because our like GDP has gone up, I mean, our standard of living has gone up as well. So now what we say is poverty, but like a kid doesn't have a computer, which before would have been non-starter, like that's not a poverty line. But here, that's in order to go to elementary school, you have to have a computer at home and Wi-Fi. So like our requirements have gone up as our GDP's gone up. I just don't buy we've gotten better and wealthier. I think the same number of people are suffering and in poverty. We just see it differently because maybe now they have a market and they have clothes in a different way, but they still don't have the basic necessities requirement for, a
Yeah.
life.
Well, and I mean, the UN is the one saying that less people around the world are living under the poverty line. So the data is there, the research is there, but that's exactly why it's good to go and look it up, because you're like, that
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah,
so
and I would
it's,
just say,
it's a
like,
good exercise.
poverty line is great and all, but just like was said before, $13,000 is the poverty line for that's not even minimum wage in California, but that's still considered the poverty line across the United States. So I would say it's probably similar, like $25 a day. Most of those folks aren't. Anyway, it's interesting.
So, because that's a discrepancy between what poverty might be considered is really what you're pointing to. So yeah, good. And that's what we want this course to do, is just make you think and make you think about where to find the information and then what to do about the information that you have. One of the reasons that poverty around the world is changing, which is directly related to this class, is that people are actually more motivated to give to others than any time in history. So that is one of the reasons why the global poverty is changing. And we saw that regress a little bit since COVID, but more people are more motivated to be global citizens in this way through generosity than any other time in history.
Do you think that may be due to the pandemic, because everybody was in the same exact predicament? So everybody understood what everybody else was going through in some form. In my mind, I see that as everybody, instead of having people who have no clue what the people at the bottom are going through, everybody was going through something intense. And so it made people more aware of the way they could help.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about it that way. And I don't think that this quote is directly related to the pandemic specifically, as opposed to more like our generation or the recent generations. But that's a really good thought, Andrea, because that's true. That's another way to look at it, is kind of being like, okay, we're all in the same boat together. Now, still, though, if you go to other countries and look at how the pandemic affected them versus how it affected us here, there is a great discrepancy, just like Becca was saying. So, but that's part of the opportunity that you have through Given University, is you can actually go to those places and see for yourself. You can go down to Mexico and do a home build for a family that doesn't have a home. You can travel to Kenya and visit these precious children at this orphanage. Like, you have that opportunity through Given University to see firsthand what is really happening out there in the world and how is it different than our own situation. And again, what you might be able to do about it. So this question comes up kind of often. Well, maybe they're just not working hard enough. Poor people they're being entitled, right? They're looking for the handout. They're not working hard enough, or they're not working at all. So the question can be, why can't poor people just start working more? And something that Ariel said has a little bit to do about that in terms of resources or access. But some of the reasons why poor people can't kind of break beyond that barrier could be they're just focused on survival. So they're just focused on getting enough, that $1.25, so that they can put food on the table today. And they can't really think about having an entrepreneurial endeavor to improve their life kind of on a larger scale. They also might be in a country where the government is corrupt and takes a great portion of their money, or doesn't provide the resources or programs to provide assistance. Sometimes they're just a bit defeated and don't know how to get started. Like they have ideas or they have opportunity, but they just don't know how to start. They need support. And other times they don't have the raw materials to work with. They don't have the things to create something else, or they don't have the funds to start something new. So those are some of the challenges that people who are poor and are looking to get out of that cycle might be facing. So then it kind of feels like, well, what can be done? Can the poor ever escape the trap of the poverty cycle? Are they able to get beyond it? And it's yes, they can. I mean, we're seeing that in the numbers from 24 years ago to 5 years ago. We're seeing that the poverty levels are decreasing. Situation is getting better around the world. Now, we could say it's not happening quickly enough or to the level that we want it to happen, but it is happening. And so how can we also help with that? And a lot of those things are some of the basics. It's access to safe drinking water so that children aren't dying at an early age, or it's education so that they can better themselves or have access to healthcare, provide healthcare for other people. It's training and support so that they can put their ideas into action and be an entrepreneur, or it's seed money so that they can start a small business. And when we're talking small business, like really think small business for some of these, for some of them, we're not talking about building a business. We're talking about just doing something small that will produce revenue for my family. The other thing that they need is government transparency to be able to serve their families better. So a willingness to personally work hard for economic improvement is kind of the starting point. Like Given University is not really interested in saying, hey, there's lots of people out there in the world who need a handout. Would you please give them a handout? Given University wants to assume that we're going to help people who are going to work hard to help themselves as well. So that's kind of where a starting point. So what is the right way to end poverty? Is it just, let's all collect $44 billion and send it to people who can't afford food? And that's not really what we're trying to accomplish. What we do want to accomplish is economic growth. We want to invest for return, and so that it's over the longer term, not just a one-time thing. Remember the thing of teach a man to fish is different than hand a man a fish. So how can we grow an economy? Like, I'm not an economics major. This is not what I think about when I'm sleeping. So how do you grow an economy is probably not the question most of us go around thinking about every single day. So this is just an encouragement of, hey, think about it a little bit. What can you do to help grow an economy? And often it's seed money and training. If someone has seed money and training, they're able to improve their household economy. And now you've helped one person, one family, one community, one neighborhood, one country, etc. We actually saw this question in action when we went to Lebanon. What happens if you give a third world entrepreneur 2 rabbits? What happens? There's the 2 rabbits. Ariel, you met these gentlemen. What happens when you give a third world entrepreneur 2 rabbits?
They use it to create 2 more rabbits, and before you know, you're overrun with rabbits in a good way.
Yep. So they mate the rabbits. Now they can feed their family because they have rabbit meat, and rabbit meat's pretty good. So they can now feed their family. And pairs of rabbits don't just have 2 rabbits, they have litters of like a dozen. So you're not going to eat all dozen rabbits. So now you can sell those rabbits to families around you and get some cash, right? And so forth and so forth and so forth. So by just providing a pair of rabbits, you can impact a family's ability to eat for a long time. Because now they're not just eating rabbit meat, they're using the food to buy the vegetables or whatever else that they need. Now, what if you gave a different entrepreneur carrot seeds? What would happen? Well, he's going to plant carrots, he's going to feed his family carrots, right? And he's going to sell the extra carrots to the rabbit guy. So now you're building a local economy that is helping itself. It's building off of itself. And all it takes is a pair of rabbits. Here's a couple of proverbs that are really good to think about. He who is generous will be blessed, if he gives some of his food to the poor. Oh, for he gives some of his food to the poor. And also, whoever gives to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to poverty will be cursed. And just by you being here and being here for these 7 weeks, we really appreciate that you are not closing your eyes to poverty, but rather you're willing to look at it and look at the numbers and again, ask, what can you do about it? How can you affect just one person's economy or one family's economy or on a larger scale? So let's talk a little bit about the 2 rabbit concept, the giving someone 2 rabbits. If I give a local entrepreneur enough money to buy 2 rabbits, he's going to be able to produce more from those 2 rabbits. So that is called microeconomic lending. And microeconomic lending is just giving a small amount of money to a trained entrepreneur who's going to have the skill set and ability to use that money to build a small business. And most successful microloans use co-ops. So meaning it's a group of people who are going to rely on each other and help each other. They're going to support each other because their personal success depends on the other person. So that means that if I give $50,000 each to Albert, Andrea, and Andre, and I say, combine your $150,000 and you're going to do this with a project you guys choose. Yeah, Andre likes that. I see it. And you use that to build a small business, but you all 3 have to contribute and you all 3 have to succeed. Now, if Andre's not doing so well, what's going to happen? Albert's going to step in and help him out and bring him into shape and give him the extra training, right? Because when you work together, you're more likely to be successful. So the more successful microloans are those when it's a group of people that rely on each other and will support each other. So let's take a look at Kiva.org. Kiva is an organization that their primary purpose is to provide microloans. Now, it's not their own funding, but they take people who have a little bit of extra money. You can start with as little as $25 and make a loan to someone in a third world country who has an opportunity or an idea. So Kiva's like a matchmaker. And they kind of vet the giver and vet the person who is going to be receiving it. And they're a great organization. And they have this whole process where you can choose the person you would like to loan a small amount to. You make the loan and you get repaid, and then you do it again. It's a cycle. And their success rate is a 97% success in payback for those microloans. So that means that most people who received a small loan are successful and pay the money back. So it's pretty exciting. And remember when we asked you, what's your passion? What's the people group that you are passionate about? Part of it is you can use that now that you've identified it, and you can go here and say, well, you know what? I'm really passionate about women, or I'm passionate about education. I forget who it was said I think it was Anthony, you're passionate about people who are oppressed. So conflict zones. And you can go in here and meet individuals who have an idea, and you can loan them $25, and it becomes a powerful starting point for them. And this organization, something that's pretty cool that we like to point out, this isn't a faith-based organization. They also welcome all kinds of people. There's actually a team of people that call themselves the Kiva lenders, who are atheists, agnostics, skeptics, free thinkers, etc. So almost anyone is welcome to participate in this program. And we do also have a Given University team that is part of it. So we'd love to see if this is something that speaks to you, we'd love to see you join that team and be part of it, the global economy, in this way. We have a pretty cool video. Let's see if it'll play here. And if it doesn't, maybe Dan can share it. Let me know with a thumbs up if you're able to see it and hear.
Change the world.
Okay.
No matter who you are or where you're from. The year is 2005, and Elizabeth, a widow and mother in Uganda, needs a loan to grow her business. Each of these green sparks of light represent a $25 loan from Sandra and 4 other people who believe in Elizabeth. Sandra is among the first lenders to back someone's dream on Kiva.org, and Elizabeth is one of the first borrowers to successfully repay the people who believed in her. Watch along as more people become Kiva lenders, backing the dreams of borrowers around the world. This animation shows 10 years of Kiva's lending activity and impact. In 2006, Kiva ignites into a global phenomenon. With more than 2 billion people around the world living in poverty, lenders embrace the chance to spark change. Roughly 75% of Kiva loans are to women. Women such as Isadora in Bolivia are more likely to use their income to grow their businesses, increase crops, and send their kids to school. Her loan was crowdfunded by 45 lenders, people including Deborah in California. After Deborah was repaid, she relent the same $25 to another borrower, like Gina in the Philippines. By the end of 2009, more than $100 million in loans and funding, and Kiva continues to crowdfund innovation by pushing the boundaries of financial inclusion. Education loans marked in yellow help students, including Miriam in Kyrgyzstan, finance her education, vastly increasing her lifetime earning potential. Her dream is backed by 41 people like you. By 2012, lenders have funded thousands of loans in conflict-affected regions to people such as Amadou in Mali, where access to capital is key to rebuilding. Alice in Uganda and other borrowers are able to take out green loans through Kiva. And by 2013, lenders have funded thousands of green loans for organic agriculture, clean cook stoves, and solar lights. Kiva is both a global and local phenomenon. Watch as people in the US, Kenya, and Mongolia lend to others in their own communities. And after 10 years with the help from hundreds of field partners, these 1.8 million borrowers in over 80 countries have a repayment rate of 97%, allowing 1.4 million people like you to relend that money again and again. And all of this change is being made one person, one loan at a time. It's been 10 years, and Kiva is still all about supporting each other as a connected global family. By working together, each of us can be the spark that changes the world. At kiva.org.
Isn't that cool? I love it when all the little lights start flying across. And then that just goes to show how a very small thing can have an impact on a global scale. So the idea that I can't do enough is really not true anymore. And the idea that, well, how can we help people who just need a little bit to get going? There's great opportunity. So we'd love it if you go out and take a look at them and see if that's something that you want to do. It's great for families. I know there's a couple of you here who have young kids. That's a great way to get the kids involved in selecting someone that you'd like to invest in with a small microloan. So great. So that was actually the last thing in the slide, which means I get to tell you about homework. But any questions or final comments before we move into that? Dan, how are we doing on time? Anything else or that I missed?
No, we're doing really good on time. And with Kiva, there's all kinds of different things you can choose. You can all over the world, all over the place, all kinds of stuff. And so take a good look at it. It's really extraordinary because their payback rate is so good. That means they're really doing a good job. I'm not sure what they would score on our score sheet, but even if they were 15 or 16, they're probably doing a lot on the back end to make sure the loans get repaid and the loans and the funding gets out there in a good manner. But no, when I did the GU class, Kiva was one of the things that I really didn't know anything about. I'd never heard of it. And it was something that I was really excited about because you can bring it down to the $25 level. And if you have grandkids or if you have kids, it's something you can spend some time with them on, just looking on the research. It's just so good for your kids and your grandkids just to see all the needs that are out there and how most of the time how blessed they are. Yeah, we're doing really good on time. Thank you.
One thing that I looked at Kiva as when I did this a few years ago was when I was growing up, the big thing was like adopt a child through Compassion or an organization like that. Like adopt a child, you send $25 or $30 a month to that child to help with meals or education or whatever it is that they need. And that's just a direct investment. It's a gift, which is a wonderful thing to do. But Kiva is a little bit different because you're actually investing in a person's ideas and work to help them now provide for themselves and their children and perhaps an extended family or whatever it is. And just like, when you have the carrot farmer and you have the rabbit farmer, that supports each other in the community. And so you're potentially helping an even wider base of people. So it's really cool. You guys ready for homework? The exciting thing is, yep, I see you doing your happy dances again. The exciting thing is that we're going to start to get into really hearing from each other and what is it that you've learned and what is the organization that you've selected. And it's really cool to hear about all the great organizations that are out there. You'll get to learn about some new ones. And what we're going to do the next 3 weeks is each person will present their organization. And present is a really generous, large word because we're just asking you to share for 2 minutes about the organization, what it is that they do, why you selected that organization, and what you learned in the process of reviewing them through the 990 analysis form or talking to their leadership or anything else. Some of you have sent me a couple of 990 analysis forms, which is great. We love to see that you're practicing and that you're going through different organizations and finding out more information. But now's the time to choose one. So if you've reviewed several, that's fantastic practice. Now go back and choose one organization that is going to be the organization that you present, preferably the organization that you're going to request the grant for, because this is really preparation for submitting your grant application. So you will do one more form, which you haven't done yet, which is the organizational review form. And that's just a document where you're going to put the information about the organization, add a little bit about why you selected it, what you're excited about, how you've been involved with them, and then you'll send that back to us. And that's what you'll present off of. So today's homework is really just getting ready for next week. The organizational review form, it's on the website, but I'll also attach it in the email that I'll be sending out to you guys today. And if you are not sure, a few of you have already reached out. So if you're still having trouble deciding which organization or having trouble finding an organization that is in line with what you want to do, then be sure to reach out to Dan and I so that we can help you. Okay. So what you are going to do for next week, I think I have one more slide here with some details. There we go. So by next Saturday at the latest, and that's so that I can make sure that we have everything in. By Saturday, you're going to do one organizational review sheet. I'll be sending that out today, or a couple of you already sent it in, so that's great. One organizational review sheet by Saturday with the analysis scorecard and the 990 tax filing. Now, if you have already sent me the scorecard and the tax filing, you don't have to send those again. I just need the one organizational review sheet. If you're sending it for an organization that you haven't already sent to me, then please send me all three things. The new form, the scorecard, and their tax filing, the long PDF document. We want that as well so that we can go ahead and check some things with you. In my email today, I'll be sharing a sign-up link. So we're going to ask you to sign up for a slot to present, to share your organization. This is a big class. We have 24 people. So over the next 3 weeks, 8 people will present in each class. And that sign-up sheet is going to be a first come, first serve. So you can choose one of 3 days. You have to choose one of the 3 days. But then just let us know if you need more help. Okay? Any questions? I'm happy to stick around for a couple extra minutes if you've had trouble with your organization or the form or have questions. If you don't have questions, I will be sending out the email today. I already have it ready. I'll just wait for the link from Dan with the class recording, and then I'll send that out so that you have the sign-up sheet and the organizational review form. Dan, anything else before I open it up for questions?
Yeah, the thing that we have is, like Kim was saying, we have 24. Normally the limit on these classes is 15, but I break all the rules so I can get people out there. So we'll probably extend class by about 12 minutes a session for the next 3 sessions. Tonight, we're probably going to be done early, actually. So it's going to stretch just a little bit so we can give everybody the 2 or 3 minutes to make a presentation. It's nothing totally, terribly dramatic. It's just that I got to because I promised you you'd be out by 7, so I try to keep our promises. But because we have so many and everybody's sticking with class, nobody's dropping. We'll probably go an extra 10 to 12 minutes. The other thing I gotta ask is, if you missed a session, make sure you watch the video and you do a paragraph or two of what the class was about. And so I gotta check with Anthony. Were you able to watch the video from last week?
Anthony and Kayla turned it in. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then there was
Mr.
Dion,
Dion.
I think Dion, were you able to watch the video?
Yes, I just had to turn in my paragraph.
Okay, thank you very much. That's perfect. So yeah, that's all I really have. So you can
Okay.
keep,
So just remember, next week we will probably go a little bit beyond 6:30, so please just plan accordingly. And that will probably be true for the next 3 weeks. We'll still try to keep it as brief as we can. We're trying to shorten the teaching material so that we have a little more time for the presentations. But again, those are 2 to 3 minutes. Don't feel like you have to prepare anything outrageous. And then if you have any other questions or concerns about that, just reach out. I see Nancy and John. Go ahead.
So we watched the Poverty Inc. movie and answered the questions. Did you say that you wanted us to like scan and submit that to you?
Yes, please send that in. The questionnaire is actually going to be due in 2 weeks. That'll be in the email that you get today. So if you haven't watched the documentary, go ahead and plan to do so. If you've already watched documentary, go back and answer the questions and send that in. That is a required item for graduating from the class. So some of you have already sent it. Thank you. If Nancy, you can go ahead and send that my way. And just take a picture of the sheet is fine if you did it handwritten. Not a problem. Good question. Anyone else? Come on, you guys, don't make it so easy on me. Kiva, you turned in your questionnaire. You enjoyed that. Anything you want to say for those who haven't watched it yet? What struck you the most about the Poverty Inc. documentary?
What struck me the most was, well, I think it was kind of, for me, I don't think it struck me the most, but I think it was just kind of confirmation on some of the larger donors and organizations that are supposed to help these countries and things of that nature, and how it's kind of just colonization tweaked. So it wasn't surprising, it was just confirmation.
Okay.
But I like how they broke it down.
Good. Yeah. Adriana, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, so on one of the 990 analysis, where it asks about the salaries, I couldn't find anybody listed. It actually said 0 on that one.
Okay.
And it just gave an amount that was given for benefits. So what do you do in that scenario?
Sometimes they list it in a different spot in the 990. So on that little analysis sheet, it tells you page 7, row 2, whatever it is. And then there's another note that says this also might be in this other spot. Sometimes instead of putting it on that first section, they list it down towards the bottom of the document. So if you send me, I did look at yours because you sent me the analysis twice, and the first one you had it blank, but then in the second one you did it correctly. So if you're talking about that organization specifically, I can send you another email just showing you where it is on the 990. And that's part of why we ask you guys send your 990 in addition to the analysis form, so that we can check some items or kind of help with those kinds of things. Is it for the organization you sent me, Adriana?
Yeah, so just look further in the tax reports.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll pinpoint it in the PDF and send it back to you, or tell you where to look.
Okay.
So if you look at a different one, you know how to find that.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
question.
did the benefits kick it over the amount that we use? That they listed, Adriana?
So the benefits and compensation, it was a very high number, but
Okay.
everything else gave me 3 points.
Okay,
So yeah,
Okay.
so I don't know how to find that, who's getting the money.
Yeah, one way you can do it is call them up and ask them if they could email us the info, because you know what, is public information. It's there,
Okay,
it's there somewhere, they can't hide it, so, I mean, they can hide it, but still public. Well, put it to you this way. If they don't want to let you know, what does it tell you?
not a good sign.
Not a good sign, right? If people don't want to be transparent about that, then there's probably something they're trying to hide.
You know, I don't want to cut into the assignments, but if you guys wanted to, I have a little, I work in wealth management and I have a background in missions, and I can talk a little bit more to the points you were talking about earlier, Keem, in terms of why we're coming the world, we're seeing such an elevation in terms of not only standard of living, but also alleviation of poverty. If we had time for that, I don't know what time we're planning on getting out of here. It's probably already a little bit past our time, but we certainly would be happy to talk with anybody individually as well, more about
Okay,
the subjects.
So if you want to stay on a few minutes, like Becca with your questions specifically, but if anyone else kind of wants to hear a little more from Ariel on that space, feel free to stay on. We'll keep the line open. But otherwise, we are at 6:30, so you are free to go. We are finished.
Normally, Kim, we go to 7, just so to remind you.
Mhm.
You do, okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's up to you.
No, that's fine, because we'll have it a little longer the next
Yeah.
3 times, because we have more information. And so yeah, we're good. We're good. And I think, let me turn off the recording first of all.
Okay.